Smythe's weekly property tips. I'm Mark Madden, and backed by popular demand, we have Natalie Graham, our business development manager for the property management team. Thanks, Nat.
Very welcome.
We've got Nat back to help us discuss things in regards to selling a property with a tenant in place. It can be a little bit tricky with a tenant. Obviously, it's not a third wheel, but we have to respect the fact that they live in the property. So, what's the first thing that we have to do once the landlord signed the paperwork and said, yep, the house is going on the market? We would send out a notice of...
We do, yeah. So the first thing we actually do is phone the tenants. We just like to have the chat with them, let them know what's coming.
Yep.
And we then have to issue a 14-day written notice advising the tenants that the property will be listed on the market for sale.
Perfect. And in that time as well, in the 14 days, the sales agent or myself would sit down with the tenant and discuss, how they'd like things to run, so that we both work as a team for the sale. And that might be they're a shift worker and they can't do Wednesdays, or we might do open houses this Saturday and have next Saturday off. So little things like that, and also answer any worries that they may have, which we're going to get to while we do this video. Secondly, if I'm going to book an inspection, how many times a week am I allowed to go through?
So the tenant doesn't have to agree to any more than 2 inspections per week.
Yep.
So that's not saying if they're not agreeable to it, you can do more than that.
Yep.
But no more than 2 they are required to attend.
Yep, perfect. And giving notice as well, I try and give a tenant as much notice as we can. So occasionally we will get someone that will walk in the front door or give us a call and say, hey, I'm in Tamworth, can we come and have a look? It's completely up to the tenant. I say this from the start. If you can't do it, just say, no, I can't, but could you come tomorrow or can you come next week? You've got to live there, we have to respect that fact. By bringing a property onto the market that is tenanted and it wasn't planned to go on the market, if that makes sense. So there's a little box you can tick in the lease agreement, is that correct? Yep. Now, if that's been ticked, the house is not on the market, this creates a loophole if the landlord does decide to sell it.
Correct. So essentially, if a tenant signs a lease agreement and the owner doesn't disclose that they plan to list the property on the market for sale, say 6, 12, 10 years time, they do decide to sell the property, once we issue that 14-day notice to the tenant, they can legally break their lease with no financial penalty. In saying that, if they sign the lease, and when they sign the lease that the owner has disclosed that they plan to sell the property, if the tenant decides to break their lease, then they have to pay the relevant break lease fee.
Yeah, perfect. So little clause there, when you've signed your lease, if you've got your paperwork available, obviously feel free to have a chat to the property management ladies as well. Now, we've sold the property, the sold sticker's gone up, so it's exchanged, meaning the sale's locked in. And we've got an owner-occupier buying the house, so they're planning on moving in. How many days' notice do we have to give?
Sure. So once contracts exchange, subject to vacant possession, we have to give the tenant 30 days written notice that they'll need to move out of the property.
Yep. And before this happens, obviously with exchange, a buyer would need to do pest and building and evaluation from the bank most likely. So that would be booked in with the tenant, so they can sort of see what's happening. Again, communication is a huge factor throughout the whole time. So I guess if we're communicating and saying, hey, it's looking good, it's about to exchange, I guess they can foresee that the 30 days is going to come.
Correct.
So, now if we're in a lease, and let's say it's an owner-occupier that wants to move in it as well, there is some protection for the tenant, isn't there?
Definitely. Definitely. So while the tenant's in a lease, we can't ask them to leave the property. Say they've got another 12 months left on their lease, we can't ask them to move out until the lease is coming up for expiry. We issue them 30 days notice prior to the expiry, which means they then move out the day after the lease expires.
Yep, perfect. And obviously if it's not an owner-occupier and it's a landlord, they may just want to stay on anyway. So, in that instance, they may speak to Natalie or one of the ladies, and the tenant may just go on, like they have for the past couple of years or months or whatever the time frame.
Exactly.
Anything else you can think of from a tenant's point of view?
I just think, as Mark said, communication is so important between the sales agent, the tenant, the owner, and us in property management. That initial contact we make with the tenant, we explain to them their rights and responsibilities in the sale process as a tenant. And then, as Mark said, they come in and chat about communication preferences and things like that.
Yep, no, perfect. Thanks, Nelly, again. Obviously, it's always a little sticky subject, but it is obviously serious as well because people live in the house, so we've got to really respect that fact. Thanks again for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit the little bell. That will give you a notification once we post the next video. We'll put some more information underneath the video as well. If you'd like to contact the girls and discuss it further, if you're a landlord, if you'd like to speak to one of the sales guys like myself, feel free to reach out as well if you do have any questions. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.